Hello, welcome back. Briskets. That's the uh, top front part of the cow, which is very lean, and as a result, you have to slow cook to maximize the flavor. And one of the best way of cooking a brisket, first is to dry brine it, meaning that you rub it overnight, maybe several hours before. I prefer 12 plus hours. And you smoke it like they do in Texas. But let's be realistic, not everybody have a smoker. Or you could be in a situation that the weather is so bad outside, you're stuck in your house, you have a lot of time to invest. So the way I'm preparing this, I'm going to cook it in the oven while at the same time creating that smoke creation, like if it was smoking outside the smoker. So, and to do that, you have to apply some heat transfer techniques, and you have to, forget about time, because when it comes to smoking brisket or cooking them in a slow way, it's not the time, but the temperature. You have to understand the temperature. And I have a little bonus at the end, because what I'm going to do when I'm done cooking this, because it's a few steps, I'm going to show you in a summary. I'm going to describe very briefly the 6 steps that were presented before throughout the video. So make sure you watch through everything, then go to the end and listen to me talking about the 6 steps I took very briefly. So, go nowhere. Let's have some fun. Subscribe. Let's create. So I'm going to prep this baby for maybe about 12 hours in advance at the very minimum. And I wanted to show you this brisket. It's a little bit dark here because it's nighttime. But I wanted to show you this one is thin. And the brisket is by the chest of the cow. And this one in particular I bought in a local farm called Renew Pasture Farms. I'm going to put the information in my description. This cut is slightly different to some of the brisket I have bought in my go-to butcher, which tend to be thicker. But this will do for kitchen cooked brisket. And this one weighs about 1 pound and 1/3, which is, if you want to convert that in grams, is about 625 grams. And I'm not going to reinvent the wheel, and I do want to use a rub, and I don't want to create it from scratch. So I ordered this rub a while back. And I ordered from this company of a friend of mine. She's a chef, Puerto Rican friend of mine. She's been perfecting this rub for over 20 years now. And her company name is The Rub, and I'm using the original. And I'm going to put her information too. But you can use other rubs. I just happen to recommend this highly. So you're going to rub this very, very nicely. But before you do that, and this is my style, I'm using kind of a pick, and I'm going to put, I'm going to pinch it. I'm going to pinch this thing because I want the flavor of my ingredients to go through. I'm not making big holes, I'm just plucking. You could use a little knife too, a paring knife. But this thing is so thin that I don't want to overdo it. One thing you notice, I have an aluminum foil. And I have that for a reason. So I recommend you to put the rub on top of a long aluminum foil. I haven't cut it yet. I have a reason for that, which I will explain later. So you do that. And you grab this. This rub smells delicious. You grab this rub, and you're very generous on the amount that you're going to put. And you do what you're supposed to do. You're going to rub this baby. And you're going to turn it around. And you're going to rub it again. So I'm very generous. Then what I'm going to do, now that I put that rub, that ensure that it goes through the little holes, I'm going to grab a tiny bit of olive oil, just a little bit. I'm going to put it in this little brush, and I'm just going to pat it, just a little bit. Pat it. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. So you don't have to worry about some of the rub coming out because you're not done yet. What you're doing is you make sure some rub went through the little holes that otherwise would have not done that if the thing was patted first. It would have stayed outside. Do a little bit of vinegar, just a little bit, and just a tiny bit. Turn it around and do the same. You grab more rub because you want the outside to stick together. And I'm very generous. You're going to now grab some garlic, and you can cut it and put it there, but I'm going to mince it. Not how large, just a little bit, because I want the flavor and the aromatics to come. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just mince it out a little bit. Going to use 2 teeth in one side and 2 teeth in the other. Roll around this baby, turn it around, and do the same. I'm going to grab some oregano. This is for aromatics, and I'm just going to put it there. I'm going to grab some thyme. You don't have to be pretty or anything, you just put it there. This is for aromatics. And I'm going to put some rosemary. You're going to cover this in the aluminum foil. Very nicely. That's what I didn't cut it because I want to make sure it's covered correctly. This is going to keep the flavors centralized. I'm not using my regular approach of using a plastic bag. No, I'm going to use the aluminum foil. And now you put it in the refrigerator. So it's been 15 hours. And there's a difference. The thing about brisket is that briskets tend to be very lean. Therefore, the best way of cooking it so it doesn't become like a chewy. You know what, the bottom of your shoe is very chewy if you were to eat it. So you don't want to chew it. So you have to cook it slowly because of the parameters. And there's also a difference between brisket dry brine, this is the case, is a brisket dry brine because I've rubbed it hours before, versus a dry rub, which would be if I would have been rubbing it right now and then putting it in the oven. So what you're going to do, you're going to take the spices out. The spices that you put, and I'm talking about the green ones. And Now that you apply the brisket dry brine, now you're going to do a relatively easy to do dry rub. So I'm doing both techniques at the same time for this particular one. And I have my reasons. The dry brine one, ensure that the aromas and the rub went inside the little holes overnight, and now that brisket is going to taste good. Dry rub is just dry rub and drying it. Look nice, huh? Look at this beauty. So, because you're doing this in the oven and you want to do it right, you have to do some prep work very easy. You have your pan. That was about an inch or two deep, and you have the top. You can have the ones that have that are oven friendly, that have the griddles, doesn't matter. What it matters is this, you have to prep this. Now, I want my stuff to smell good. It's about cooking with the senses, right? So I got this liquid smoke, and I've chosen the hickory flavor. And you can actually do it indoors, outdoors, doesn't matter. Make sure that you can do it indoors. And what I'm going to do, and you can use any brand, by the way. I'm going to put some water here. I would say about 2, maybe 3 cups. Let's go with 3. 2.5 to 3 cups. And this is about, if my math is right, this is about half a cup, maybe. Doesn't matter. I'm just going to put half. That noise is my oven preheating. That hickory smell, huh? That hickory smell. And you know what? You see all this aromatic stuff? Why not? I'm going to put it there too. Why throw it away? You can move it. You can stir things around. Put the thing on. Transfer your brisket. And there's some things you need to know now. You need to make sure that you identify where is the thickest area of this brisket. And for me, it's going to be here. That's the thickest one. This is important because you might need a thermometer. And I actually highly encourage that you invest money in one. And the thermometer is going to go here. So I'm going to get some aluminum foil because you're going to cover during the first period of the cooking the brisket in aluminum foil. In fact, you're going to cover everything. So the smell and the heat transfer works evenly across the brisket. So you cover it. And you cover it well. And you have to know where is the thickest part because you're going to stick the thermometer So you have to create a little hole to account for that. And I have it here. So that's what you're going to stick your thermometer in that little hole. So I already have my oven preheat 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Once again, that is 250 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the equivalent of 120 degrees Celsius. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to cook first until the meat hits reach a temperature of 175 degrees Fahrenheit. So you do need a temperature, a thermometer. I have one here. Going to put it through the hole. The beauty of this thermometer is that I can leave it outside. You know, outside the thing. I'm going to put it here. And you know what? I don't want the thermometer to touch metal. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the top rack out. And I just got to go with the meat. And I'm going to let it cook. Okay, reach the 175. So I'm going to get this out. And what I'm going to do, see, the aluminum foil is not that hot, but the steam coming out of this is, so I have to be very careful. And now that it's uncovered, I'm going to put it back in. Shit. So I cook it and cover it for another 30 minutes. I did raise the temperature to 300 for those 30 minutes. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to cover it once again and let it do it. And I'm only covering the brisket, not the entire thing this time around, because the thing is hot. So, you reach 195 degrees. I want it to reach 197, but I'm not going to push it. I don't want to be here all day. So I'm going to get it out. I'm going to uncover it. See how it looks. Look at that baby. That looking pretty. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it to a cutting board. Going to put in a cutting board. I'm going to put a little towel around it. Going to wrap it up like baby. And I'm going to let it sit for somewhere between 15 to 30 minutes. And what I'm doing here, I'm allowing the temperature to distribute equally. So let's summarize all the 6 steps very briefly. First step, rub your brisket. And if you want a dry brine type of brisket, you do that about several hours before, preferable overnight. Number two, when you're ready to cook, get the brisket out of the refrigerator. Let it reach room temperature, and you start setting your container and pan. And you want to add water into the container and some of this liquid smoke. Number three, you cover when you put the brisket on top of the pan, you might have griddles there, so the brisket doesn't hit the water. What you do is you cover the entire pan, not just the brisket, with aluminum paper. The reason is you want the water and the liquid smoke, you don't want it to escape. You want that stuff to get into the brisket itself. Set the stove at 250 degrees Fahrenheit and let the brisket cook under that stages until it reaches 175 degrees Fahrenheit internal temperature. Number four, once that internal temperature is reached, take the aluminum foil out, reach the temperature from 250 degrees to 300 degrees in the stove, and let the brisket cook for somewhere between maybe 12 to 30 minutes. The thing that you have to pay attention here is that you don't want the brisket to reach 190 degrees Fahrenheit internal temperature. But the reason you uncover it is because you want things to get a little bit crispier on the top and the bottom. Number five, once you do that for that amount of time that you want to do it, now you're going to cover the brisket only, not the entire thing, just the brisket. You don't have to cover the entire pan, just the brisket. And you let it cook. You leave the temperature at 300 degrees Fahrenheit for the stove, and you let the brisket cook until it reaches an internal temperature of 195 degrees Fahrenheit. If you want a little bit higher, that's up to you, but don't go above 200. And the reason of that is you covering because, again, to raise the temperature is going to go down once you uncover it. But when you cover it, the temperature will raise again. And the reason is because the aluminum foil is not letting the air, the external air in this oven to compete with the fact that it's liquid. The heat is coming from below, so there's liquid in between the brisket, the metal, and that liquid is going to slow down considerably the heat transfer process. So by you covering, you're not competing with the air, and the brisket temperature is going to raise. And finally, once you reach 195, maybe 200 degrees, take it out, take it from the aluminum foil, put it in the cutting board, and if you want to, you can cover with a towel, so you're not competing with your air conditioner or whatever, and let it, the heat to distribute, and you leave it like that for somewhere between 15 to 30 minutes. That's all. Very simple.